Complex PTSD is such a complicated picture because there are core symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, but there are also some additional pieces to the puzzle that can overlap with other disorders. Other disorders such as borderline personality disorder, major depressive disorder, and even ADHD are often misdiagnosed when someone is experiencing complex PTSD. So in today's video, I'm going to give you 8 questions that you need to ask yourself if you suspect that you might have a complex diagnosis that could be labeled complex PTSD. Sometimes if you are dealing with borderline personality disorder and you have dealt with trauma, you may also believe that your symptoms are so complicated that you now need another diagnosis to explain what you're going through, and that would be complex PTSD. But before we do that, let me introduce myself in case you're new to the channel. My name is Tamara. I'm internationally and I'm board certified as a trauma therapist. I'm licensed in mental health. I specialize in treating children, teens, and families, as well as adults who are dealing with trauma right in my private practice. Let's jump in. Anytime I do a video on complex PTSD, I always have to explain and tease apart what post-traumatic stress disorder is. So I'm going to do that right now. Post-traumatic stress disorder, you have to have a series of criteria that is met in order to get the diagnosis of PTSD. It's not a diagnosis that can be broadly applied to anybody who experiences something that is traumatic. For the most part, trauma is defined as something that is subjective, but in my practice, and even among some of my colleagues outside of my practice, we also agree that trauma isn't always subjective, that sometimes it's objective. When your body goes through a traumatic experience, your body is constantly in a period of fight or flight. And that period could last longer than it needs to last, right? We all get nervous, we all get anxious, we all have had experiences that we could categorize as frightening and possibly even traumatic, but does that always mean that your body is going to remain in fight or flight mode long after that situation? Probably not. So that's how you can sometimes determine if it's a traumatic experience, that you're carrying something away from that experience into your everyday life that's impacting your brain, that's impacting your fight or flight mode, or what we call that's impacting central nervous system dominance, right? How your body responds when it feels like it is being threatened. We also can't forget the amygdala. The amygdala is that almond-sized structure in the middle of the brain. Here it is right here for you to see. And it basically searches for anything that is threatening. It's like a flashlight. It searches, and if it finds what it's looking for, then your body automatically goes into fight or flight mode, and your brain follows with a series of steps, so to speak, that puts your body into a mode that makes you feel like you're back in the trauma. So keep all of that in mind as we go along in this video. Now, let me get back to teasing apart PTSD and CPTSD. So post-traumatic stress disorder, you have to meet a certain set of criteria. There's criteria A, there's criterion B, there's criterion C, and the list goes all the way on, I think, until D or G. So here's what you need. You need a traumatic situation that is stressful. You need to have the experience of wanting to avoid that traumatic situation or that traumatic memory or dream that reminds you of something that you don't want to be reminded of, or puts your mind back into a place where it was in the past. You also have to have the re-experiencing piece of PTSD, that you are re-experiencing the trauma either through a dream, flashbacks throughout the day, right? Something triggers a memory of something right in the middle of something else. So let's say, for example, you've had a trauma of being sexually violated by your narcissistic father. Here's what's likely going to happen. If you are in a playground and you're watching another child with his father, you may automatically get a flashback, and your mind kind of like a comic book, right? It kind of flips through all these different scenes, and it's taking you back to a place you don't want to be. So you could experience that as well. We also have to be able to tease apart PTSD from other mental illnesses that could better explain your symptoms. So for example, sometimes ADD for adults, attention deficit disorder, makes much better sense than PTSD. Sometimes major depressive disorder and anxiety disorder makes better sense than PTSD. So we have to be able to decipher Is this true PTSD, or can we better explain these symptoms using another label and another set criteria that makes better sense? You also have to have symptoms that last for a month or more, meaning that you're not just getting over this, that this is a series of symptoms that impacts you in a negative way. Now, complex PTSD has at least 5 features that makes it complex PTSD. One is emotion dysregulation. You have to have that emotion dysregulation. The other piece is that disturbance in relationships. So there's an interpersonal disturbance. And there's also what we call an intrapersonal disturbance, or a negative self-concept, right? You have to have that as well. Alterations in memory or consciousness, right? So you're struggling with your mind, your memory, your ability to cognitively grasp things is minimal. And it makes it really difficult for you to function in daily life. You may also forget things that you may have done maybe 5 or 10 minutes ago. There has to be some kind of alteration in cognition and consciousness. There's also adversely affected beliefs, which means that maybe you had a very healthy belief system before the trauma. Maybe you could have had a very healthy kind of concept of certain things and certain beliefs before the trauma. But unfortunately, that traumatic experience got in the middle, and now you're having a hard time believing or having some kind of positive belief system that is balanced. The other thing is somatic distress, right? Meaning that you're going through some bodily problems, some bodily aches and pains that are just difficult for you to manage. Rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis, fibromyalgia, maybe you have diabetes, maybe your blood pressure is up, right? So you have to have that somatic distress. When I talk to people about complex PTSD, one of the things I try to get them to remember is the 3 most important aspects of complex PTSD, which is emotion dysregulation, negative self-concept, and interpersonal challenges. That's really all you need in order to be labeled as someone with complex PTSD. Now, let me also add to this that there is no diagnostic criteria of complex PTSD in the DSM. But in the International Classification of Diseases 11, which is kind of like this worldwide diagnostic book for all human issues, it contains within its pages the diagnosis of complex PTSD. And in order to meet their diagnostic criteria in the ICD-11, you have to have that emotion dysregulation, you have to have that negative self-concept, and the interpersonal challenges. That's all you need. So what are some questions that you should be asking yourself? Well, let me give you a few things to ask yourself to kind of help you reflect upon your own childhood so that you can see, is this something that may be me? Does this better explain why I'm struggling, why I have a negative self-concept, why my emotions are all over the place, okay? So the first thing you want to ask yourself is, was my home environment safe and secure when I was growing up? Was it safe? Was it secure? Did I feel safe? Did I feel secure? Did I experience harsh discipline? Were there expectations that were way too high and unreasonable, right? Such as don't get an F this whole school year, right? Or don't get a B minus this whole entire school year, right? So did I have expectations that were way too high and unreasonable, right? How do I cope with stressful situations that I can't really wrap my mind around? What's my immediate reaction to stressful situations? Is it a healthy one or an unhealthy one? Am I avoiding? Am I blocking? What's going on there? Can I describe my childhood at all? Can I describe my childhood in positive ways, right? Can I describe it in a way where I know I was loved, even though certain things happened that wasn't okay, right? Were there times when I was told to keep secrets, and were those secrets unfair for me to keep? Were there times when I would reach out for support and my parents or my guardian would pull me back and say, nope, don't ask for support? You felt isolated and withdrawn, right? So ask yourself that. Did I feel isolated and withdrawn growing up? Was I sad or was I a happy kid? Did my parents always give me unconditional love, right? These are all questions that you could be asking yourself or should be asking yourself if you are concerned that you have complex PTSD. The answers to these questions can lead you down the road of understanding as to why you deal with difficult relationships, why it's hard for you to maybe attach or detach, why you're obsessive or not obsessive, right? Why you are not worried, you're kind of nonchalant about things, or why you are possessive or almost obsessive about relationships and people, right? All of those childhood experiences in those questions kind of leads you down the road of understanding whether or not you have complex PTSD. So if you want to learn a little bit more about this topic, click on my live video right here that I did a couple days ago on this topic. And I also talk about some things here that might be important for you as well. Thank you so much for being with me in today's video. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button and that bell button so that you can get more videos like this and be able to catch my live chats. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.